Alright, so we have our first speakers of the day. As I already invited Mr. Anuj Kumar, the co-founder and MD Affle. Once again, Mr. Anuj Kumar was among the first to join the Affle founding team beginning 2006, while the company was in early stages of inception. Anuj has played a pivotal role in building and growing Affle. Over the last 8 years, under his leadership, his team has worked with several top marketers in Asia to help deliver end-to-end mobile advertising solutions through Affle's products and platform. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please have a round of applause for Mr. Anuj Kumar, the co-founder and MD Affle. Welcome, sir. The moderator for this session is Mr. Anant Rangaswami, the senior editor, firstpost.com. Mr. Anant Rangaswami is the editor of Storyboard, the advertising, media, and marketing show on CNBC TV 18. In addition, he is also a senior editor at firstpost.com. He was earlier the editor of Campaign India magazine, of which he was the founding editor. Anant has over 23 years experience in media and advertising. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause for Mr. Anant Rangaswami, the moderator, who is the senior editor at firstpost.com. Over to you, gentlemen.
There's a problem with the digital age that profile is a little old, so I'm not senior editor at First Post anymore, but I'm certainly editor of Storyboard. And before we begin, I was at one of a few hundred people in Delhi day before yesterday, and when Google had their Sundar Pichai show, and then you could hear 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 500 million, 1.2 billion, and mobile. I mean, that's all you heard. And, I thought it was a good sort of setup to today's conversation because, one of the problems with a large gathering like the Delhi one is the targeting is very poor. So even a Sundar Pichai had to talk to people who were, shall we say, mobile illiterate, and talk to, experts, people who knew a hell of a lot more about mobile. Today in Bangalore, it makes it easier because there's a filter. Bangalore is digitally a lot more aware than Bombay or Delhi or the rest of India. So you can have a sharper conversation rather than a broad-based conversation. So there'll be no dumbing down that, even Rajan and Sundar had to do in Delhi. So we'll talk to the digitally and mobile aware as opposed to anything else. So start, Anuj, with a very simple one. What are the three biggest challenges that the Bangalore marketer is going to have in the next 2-3 years?
Okay. Very interesting question. Bangalore marketers would have.
No, I think it's important to have that filter. It is a different league of people. I have chats with marketers across the country. And in Bangalore, I've got to keep saying, excuse me, 1 second, can you repeat that? Can you explain that to me? I don't have to do it in Bombay or Delhi. So back to you, Anand.
No. I think it's a very relevant question because I think if I look at the markets also, I think the Bangalore marketer is definitely far more technology aware because most of the marketers, at least in Bangalore, are part of companies which are either e-commerce, app-only companies, and for them, whether it's digital advertising, mobile advertising, that's like the backbone of the business. So I think that's where the classification of Bangalore marketer being different from Delhi and Bombay, I think I would quite agree with. Now going to a question of the three challenges, I think, so if I'm focusing on the Bangalore marketer, I think clearly from the app-only / e-commerce kind of digital kind of companies who are looking at marketing, I think that side obviously is far more aware. They're spending much greater part of their dollars on digital even today versus the traditional brand marketers like the FMCGs and the automakers, etc. And I think given that they're spending a lot more, they're far more aware and understand about the ecosystem.
Right.
I think the three challenges I see which are really impacting them. I think one is that a lot of companies who are doing work on mobile or digital advertising have created silos for themselves, which is creating a lot of terminologies, different terms, and it becomes very difficult for any marketer to navigate that who could be my one single platform or companies with which I can work with. Because all the 20 people who are trying to hit out to him seem to have fancy slideware, seem to have all the terms which could confuse the hell out of everybody. So I think the big challenge is first is around unification. And why that unification is important comes the second challenge, because that's really around data. Because today, as an e-commerce or an app-only marketer, I think a lot of the marketing is dependent on the kind of data which you are gathering. So being a digital company yourself, you have access to a lot of data, because when your advertising is being shown, you clearly know that from that advertising, how many guys went in, downloaded my app, how many of them transacted, how many registered. How can you layer that first-party data to make your advertising more impactful? So I think first is really around platform unification. Second is around data, and that data can be based on what you hear on your apps and outside. And the third, I think I see much greater action and talk these days in the performance marketing is really around fraud detection and elimination.
Absolutely. And I was going to come to that. You know, this fraud bit is huge.
Yep.
It's the elephant in the room as far as this business is concerned, where everybody is like used to be an expert in say digital media buying, you know, 3-4 years ago. Suddenly everybody is an expert in you know, in app downloads, and that's a lot of money riding there.
Yep.
So, you know, how do you deal with that area? How would a young marketer or a company which has just got into, say, mobile marketing or app marketing, how will they navigate that area of fraud?
So I think the fraud is a reality.
Right.
I think it's really the only way to navigate is to work with companies or platforms who have built expertise. I think as a marketer, you don't need to build that expertise yourself, because there are specialists who are doing that.
Right.
Because it's a full science in itself. It's almost like hacking. So it's almost like a virus, that there are antivirus companies. No company today says that, okay, I'll build my own antivirus. You buy an antivirus off the shelf, and which keeps your PC safe. Same way for fraud, it's a reality. But there are companies and platforms who are doing that. We do that, and we know several other companies who are doing that. And really it's around elimination of that, because any industry which grows really fast, these kind of malpractices do emerge.
Right.
And I think the performance advertising industry has really driven the mobile ad revolution in India. So the market has become almost 2.5 times in the last 12 months.
I know, but Anuj, you said something a few minutes ago which says everybody's got fancy slideware.
Yep.
You know, they you know, if somebody, shall we say, coming in from the cold, all these slides look as good as each other. And so you're claiming that, you know, you do something, somebody else claims the same thing, except that somebody else is in the fraud business and you're not. It's similar to what, say, media buying in the brick and mortar business was many years ago. You know, when you were Group M, people claimed X, Y, and Z. So did Group M.
Yep.
Both survived. It was what, maybe 10 years before the dust settled and you knew, okay, you got better value out of these. So how do you navigate that?
Actually, it's not so much that. I wouldn't agree, Anant, on that. I think the fraud is not really happening at the platform level. It's not, that there are certain companies who are doing that.
No, I'm not.
I think it's more happening at the end publisher level, or some developer who's built an app who does not have valid traffic.
Right.
So I think it's not really happening at the platform. So it's not that somebody the guy who's doing it does not have slideware and is not meeting the marketer.
Right.
I think platforms are meeting. And I think that's where the marketer needs to talk about, because most platforms today are talking that they are eliminating or detecting fraud.
Right.
And I think they need to figure out which one is doing that better, and it comes through experience. And obviously, you have your own due diligence process to decide which one would make most sense for your business.
Right. Anyway, moving away from fraud, I interrupted you. You had come to 2 concerns for marketers. What is the third concern?
Yeah. So I think the first was unification of platform.
Correct.
Second was data.
Yeah, correct.
And I think the third one really is around how is it that you would navigate the next set of people who are going to come on mobile internet.
Right.
Because the first 150 million who've come in on the smartphones are more English speaking, more metro driven, though it's not really the reality right now, it's changed. Right. But the next 150 will be even more dramatically different.
Right.
So whether it's in terms of language, whether it's in terms of video, touch, how is it that you're building experiences which are ensuring that you're connecting with these people who may not be similar to what users you have today.
Right.
So I think those are the 3 top challenges which I see impacting most enterprises, which are digital enterprises running mobile advertising or digital advertising as a core part of their business.
Sure. I'll extend that a little bit.
Yep.
One of the challenges, certainly, and you and I in total agreement, is going to be languages. You know, if the next 150, 200 million are going to come from, shall we say, Tamil speaking or Bengali speaking or Malayalam speaking areas, and with no knowledge of English, that's going to be a challenge. How do marketers market to those people in the language that they understand. The next challenge, which not very many people are speaking about, is bandwidth. I mean, we are talking about 4G from morning to night. This morning, I couldn't get 3G in the middle of Bangalore. So I was on E on Vodafone, and well, we are talking 4G, and what else we talk about, I don't know. But how do you deal with these two challenges? Because a platform, you can create the best platform in the world. Somebody's got to create the content. So how do you deal with that part of the ecosystem, which has to create the relevant content in a language and manner that a consumer understands it?
So I'll take your first point, which is the
Bandwidth
point
sure.
First. So I think bandwidth I see is more a short-term problem. I think it's happened in every country. We've had huge growth. We've all read about spectrum issues, which are hopefully the government is sorting out, and we should have the new auctions happening by March.
Right.
So I think a lot of that with 4G coming in, I think will get solved. I think 6-8 months we'll need to bear with it. But I don't think any of us is looking at a worldview of 6-8 months. I think we're looking beyond that. So I think that's definitely going to be addressed. It's going to be addressed at the spectrum side, and it's also going to be addressed by the browser or the smartphone side around making sites lighter, easier to load. So I think a lot of those developments are happening in technology. I don't really bother too much about that. There are several people. I think that's a common, like, telecom industry level problem, which is clearly being addressed.
And TRI hopefully will
I think,
put pressure.
And newer technologies like what Google is doing in terms of the balloon technology or in terms of smart cities. I think a lot of parallel initiatives are happening which will make this problem lesser impacting. But while I say that, it will always happen that you'll have 4G, you'll still crib, because then you would be used to watching everything as video.
Right.
So I think so I think our consumption will change, but I don't think it's that big an issue right now. I think the language part still is. And clearly internet in India started off as an English internet. It's evolved to language. And I see a lot more scope for that growth. And I think what's really happening is that building a strong advertising and commerce ecosystem is going to really drive that change. Because today you need to create entrepreneurs sitting in Kochi or Vijayawada or any other place who are building language internet. Why would they build it? They would build language-specific destinations because they have a reliable revenue model. And I think that's where the advertising and commerce ecosystem will play a significant role.
Right.
And I think the backbone of that is fairly well settled. The advertising ecosystem is well settled. I see a clear area where advertising ecosystem will very closely blend with the payment ecosystem, because these are mobile, commerce and mobile advertising are just two sides of the same coin.
Right.
They have to merge.
Right.
So they will merge. The advertising ecosystem, whether with the efforts what Google or Facebook are doing or other companies who are doing that, I think is democratizing that you can have a lot more content creators. So I think that ecosystem is set up, which is, and with newer smartphone users coming in, I think we are a fairly entrepreneurial country. I don't think we need to worry that there'll be users and no content.
Right.
I think that will happen.
Okay, now put it this way. You just said, nobody's looking at things from a 5-year window and so on and so forth. If you're talking to the marketers in this room, and right now, how much focus should they put on getting worrying about the Indian language content, or would you say, stick to what we have today and worry about that later?
So I think,
or is it in parallel in some form?
So I think it's kind of parallel. So I think in terms of they need to worry on that, but having local language content to advertise on, that will keep growing. I think that's not the worry of the marketer. That's more on the publishing community, and that's something which they are, all of them are working towards that. I think from a marketing perspective, it's really around building more intuitive interfaces on your apps. So whether it's touch, whether it's camera, whether it's video, I think all of those will play a significant role in terms of how your content gets consumed.
Right.
So let it not be so dependent on text. And I think if you're building interfaces like that, then you're going to, because in India, one is your language literacy, second is illiteracy, where somebody can't read or write any language.
Correct. Then you need
we
video.
need to look at interfaces which are beyond your traditional text interfaces.
Right.
So I think those developments is something which any marketer should worry about, because at least most marketers in this room or in this city are looking at those interfaces as driving their business.
Right.
So it's not an app just to experience your brand. It's an app where all the transactions of your brand are happening.
Right.
So you better build it in a way that it's going to stay relevant for the next 200, 500 odd million people who are going to go onto smartphones and download apps.
Right. Now, you brought up the issue of India as a very entrepreneurial country, and I think there's never been a better time for entrepreneurs as of today. We were discussing over a coffee that there's been a democratization of entrepreneurship in India thanks to digital and mobile. 20 years ago, if you had to launch a business, to announce it, you had to advertise in mainstream media, which almost automatically made it out of reach for, three friends who got together and started a business. And Bangalore's full of such businesses. Yep. So, what are the opportunities in the near future on the mobile internet for young entrepreneurs across the country? And what should they focus on?
So I think the entrepreneurship scenario has evolved significantly. I think I'll share some nuggets of my own information.
Right.
So I think I started out as an entrepreneur. We started Affle. It's almost been 9 years. And being an Indian entrepreneur-led company at that time, I think the challenges we faced at that time was when we started the company, we actually built out our R&D center in Singapore 9 years ago, because we were not getting enough people in India in terms of talent around knowing technology. I think a lot of that has solved today. I think the second challenge which we faced back then was around an investment climate in India. And I can talk from experience. I remember 9 years ago, we started the company. We used to go and meet VCs. A lot of them were in Bangalore. And I used to start my presentation, say that, okay, our business is based on an app. Now, I could have easily shut down my computer at that time, because after that, the slideware didn't really make any sense.
Right,
today, you walk into a meeting, and if the app is not there on your first slide, I think you can shut down your slide.
Right, yep. Just the reverse.
So I think that that's changed. I think there is a lot more awareness, understanding. The investment climate is far supportive of entrepreneurship. I think the kind of VC investments which are happening in India today, I think, are second only to what's happening in the Silicon Valley. So clearly this is where, and I think Bangalore is getting the largest share of that. So I think from an investment climate perspective, both in terms of attractiveness of talent and capital, which are the two things which really stop entrepreneurship from taking off, I think those environments are created. I have faced that challenge when we started the company, and today, from there, when we started out doing all of those things in Singapore, raising capital there, to today we run a more than 350 member R&D center in India, getting access to all the best resources out here. So I think we've seen the world change for us. And we have seen so many other companies mushroom and grow into profitable enterprises. So I think it's the most exciting time to be here, and really most exciting time to think new and innovate and build something. I think you couldn't ask for a better infrastructure to do that.
Now the flip side of VCs loving India and so on and so forth, flip side is your talent pool is in a way shrinking because there are more people chasing the same number of people, and becoming more expensive.
Yeah,
so,
very expensive.
So how do you see that play out? Because that's critical for young entrepreneurs, certainly, as critical for, I think Flipkart has, more than 100 billionaires or something like that now. Some ridiculous number. Yep. So how do you deal with that now?
So I think it's a challenge for sure. And I think that challenge has become greater in the last 12 to 18 months.
Right.
And I think what's triggered that is the $100-odd million of investments happening in several companies, all of them needing to build top-notch technology teams. Good tech talent is in short supply, and companies are ready to pay top dollar for it.
Right.
So that's a reality. But do I see this going on for the long term? I still see signs in the last 6 months that things are getting more stabilized. I think money which was being thrown is far more consciously being spent, because people are realizing, both from the investors and the entrepreneurs, that India is not a short-term story.
Right.
Companies are not going to be created in the next 12 months. Companies who are going to have the wherewithal to stay invested and build successful businesses over the next 5 to 10 years are the ones who are going to be the growth stories. So I think with that kind of realism which is happening, obviously there is consciousness of costs and some sanity is prevailing.
Right.
But if you're in good top techie today, it's no better time. You can negotiate better salaries, get great jobs. So it's time to rejoice and ride the wave.
Right.
But if you're an entrepreneur who's watching costs, who's watching P&L, obviously it's difficult, but it will stabilize, and it's on its course right now. Last 6 months has anyway seen some correction in it.
So you're going from burn rate to these wonderful words of cost and
yes,
and sanity.
I'll tell you, like today, like when I visit Bangalore far more often today than I used to visit earlier. And half the time when I'm in Bangalore, I'm interviewing, because I'm getting access to a lot of talent. And a lot of talent is because some companies built out workforces which were greater than what they could support. And today those guys are looking. So I think today is a great time to hire.
Right.
Also, because there are many companies which are not growing. So if you're growing, this is the right time to hire. So I don't see this. So I think the last 6 months has brought sanity, and which will help good companies keep attracting talent and at prices which make sense. I think if you are paying off back and not making money, then it's not a very sustainable cycle.
Correct. Now, staying with this, if you're a young entrepreneur hoping to start a business, what are the 2-3 things you would tell him to beware of? Because we've seen a lot of them die in the last 6 months, as you said. It's been a bloodbath in some cases, not just small. So what are the 2-3 things they should be aware of in this current, if they're trying to quit their jobs today and start something tomorrow?
I think one is commitment.
Right.
So I see a lot of people like today, while I'm an entrepreneur myself, I'm an angel investor. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs in advisory roles. What I see is that today people have a very short-term window. They see stories that, okay, this company they built out, they exited in 1-2 years. These are all stories we read. But for those 2, 3, 5 companies which have made exciting headlines, there have been 500, 5,000 who have not made it. I think you need to, if you are getting into something, you need to be ready to invest your 10 years. If you strike gold earlier, great, good luck, you've done a great job. But if you are going in for the short term that I'll build something and sell it off in 1-2 years, not likely going to happen. If you anyway run a company with that objective, I can reasonably assure you it won't happen.
Right.
If you run a company to last, you will find sellers.
Right.
Run a company to sell, it won't last.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important to lesson that go in for the long haul. And I know that people have much shorter time windows, but I always feel that as an entrepreneur, if you're not ready to commit 10 years, then not there. And be conscious of capital. Because I've seen of late a lot of my friends who've raised capital, raise big money, and then you get
carried away.
You get too carried away by the fancy offices and fancy lifestyles. I think you need to curb yourself. I think every dollar of money raised is responsibility on you.
Right.
People have invested that money so that you can make that money greater, not because you're going to burn it out. So, and I see that happening a lot more in the Indian entrepreneur ecosystem today, which is scary.
Right.
That you raise dollars and then suddenly you're a different company. Your office has changed, everything has changed. It's like you make fancier headlines, you're all over PR, marketing, but man, you're out there to run a business. That guy invested in you to build $1 billion company someday.
Right.
Be true to that vision. So I think stay for the long haul. Don't get overexcited by what you raise. And I think the rest of it, I think on product company, I'm sure it's very peculiar to what you're building, what you're doing. But I think these are more generic learnings which I have had both as an entrepreneur and as an angel investor seeing that.
Right. So before we get into the Q&A, I want to ask you one question. Media, I mean, since you worked in media in the traditional brick and mortar media ages ago, was a very simple thing in, say, in the middle 90s. You bought TV, you bought radio, you bought, if at all, because there was no FM those days, and you bought newspapers and outdoor. And, you didn't have to have this crazy right brain, left brain mix to understand what was happening. Now, there are, say, entrepreneurs who are not engineers. And yet, to do a media plan today or to understand marketing in the digital mobile world, you need to understand data a lot more. How do you navigate this world if you don't understand numbers as well as somebody else?
You're outdated if you don't. You're not the right person for the job. You look for a...
No, not for the job. Suppose an entrepreneur who's selling ice cream, but he wants to do his marketing on mobile and digital, but he doesn't understand numbers. Then what happens?
So I think that way, it's getting easier. So I know that we as the platform technology community have made it overly complicated.
Right.
And I think somewhere we are guilty of that.
Right.
Like I take guilt myself, and several of us who are building companies around the mobile digital advertising business have not made it easy for a small entrepreneur. But I think that's changing. I think all of us are realizing that, like, even for us, we recently launched a platform which is just targeting to the SME community, making it simple.
Right.
Just going out there, if you really want to promote your products to a set of audiences, you can, like what we call the mom and pop e-commerce or the college dorm gaming company which is being built out. How is it that that guy or that team is going to get its users who are relevant, who are going to transact and engage with him? I think simplicity is coming in. I think
Right.
we're doing it. I think a lot of, like, I think today what Google has done it is also democratizing it, that today so many people are running their businesses just on AdWords.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
don't need anything else. Companies are being built on just Facebook commerce.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think Facebook, Google, they've all done significant initiatives which are, and they're continuing to do that because all of us are realizing that that is the next boom which is happening in this economy. And if you're not there to leverage this boom, you may be missing out a significant trick, because the large enterprise is a good growing business. But this is an untapped business where, and it is core of India.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
core of Indian entrepreneurship, and that needs to be, you need to create a simpler infrastructure for them to
Absolutely.
leverage their data, advertise, and make business gains.
Right. Anyway, I'm going to cut this short because I think you'll be the richer for asking Anuj questions. He's not in a hurry, neither am I. But you got, some direct pain points or direct areas of concern to you, if you could ask Anuj. But I'll try and summarize what, Anuj and I have been discussing up to now. I think there is little doubt that I'm going to add to what I interviewed Jason Sparrow, who heads global for Google's mobile marketing. And he said, any marketer, if he doesn't get on to mobile marketing, he's dead. I mean, that's the phrase he used. He can't survive if he doesn't get onto it. And I think that's more than underlined by what Anuj is saying, and the fact that Affle committed to itself 9 years ago to get into this business. The areas to navigate are going to be difficult, in the sense their challenge is not difficult, which is language and bandwidth. And Anuj feels that bandwidth is something that the world has seen as a problem, and it gets surmounted in a matter of time. And more than this, fraud detection is an area which should concern every marketer. So he should keep an eye on the vendors, and make sure they're people of integrity and people of commitment, and people with proven track records. I think that's net what it is. I agreed when Gaurav called me and said, will you do this? Simply because I think this is the future, and I'm 54, so I'm part of the past, and I wanted to understand what is happening and what will happen. So thank you so much, Anuj, and now over to you. If we can have mics around, if you can raise your hand if you have a question. Sorry, right here, and if you can just identify yourself right here in front. Can you get a mic to him? Just identify yourself and.
I'm Raghu. I run a company called Yellow Messenger, a messaging app for commerce.
Can you talk to your mic, please? No, the mic is on. Can you speak into it?
Hello, I'm Raghu. I run a company called Yellow Messenger. It's essentially enabling commerce through messaging. The question I had is, over the last 1 year, I've seen a lot of offline advertising, billboards, pamphlets, even digital companies, app companies, focusing a lot on outdoor advertising. From our experience, we didn't find it effective. I just wanted to see the direction it's going and how effective it is, and generally your thoughts and insights on why these companies are resorting to a lot of outdoor offline advertising, and what's its relevance in especially app downloads kind of scenario.
Yeah. So I think that's a very relevant question. I think I've myself wondered on it sometimes, and I think if you look at it, that's real. Today, one of the largest categories of spenders on mass media, be it newspapers or outdoors or TV, it's the e-commerce companies. So I think they are the ones who are really driving, you don't need to do more than read your morning newspaper to know who are the guys who are spending on that. So I think if you look at it, what I see is that if today you are running a company which is focused on commerce, I think your first set of users, your first set of say 100,000 users can very well happen, and if you're based on your ambitions, it can happen only through digital advertising. But today if you see the spenders are really the Flipkart, Snapdeal, Amazon, the likes of like the bigger companies, Ola, Oyo, smaller ones also. But the bigger ones, I think the part which they are doing, which is very, very important, is that they are spending on habit changing. So today, getting me to use your company's product, I think is far easier. You can reach me through digital advertising. But getting my dad to use that, you may need to get, so I think for a lot of the larger companies, their intent is really to change habits of millions of Indians who are not using e-commerce. So making it so simple that they use it. So that's why they need to spend offline and do that. But for a company which is today riding that your ambition maybe right now is not to become the next Flipkart, you figured out your niche, you want to stay there. I think within that, if you're running just digital advertising, I think it could be as relevant and as effective. But obviously business models are different. I think if you're running a hyper-local grocery business, then you need to be out there to the housewives, in pamphlets. So I think based on the business model, some of those media decisions may differ. But broadly speaking, if you are not having an aspiration to be the largest and you're focused a niche for yourself, you can well do with digital advertising alone. But if you're doing that, then to get to the next set of audiences, you need to go beyond their comfort media, which is digital.
I'll just add a little bit. I think another determinant is how much of a hurry you are. You know, when you're in a hurry, you might want to overspend to capture share today. And I think most of the companies, even the smaller ones you're talking about who are advertising in print, are funded, and therefore they're not thinking so much about the balance sheet as you perhaps might want to do.
Correct, which is not the best way, I think.
But anyway,
yeah, you raise 100 million, you think of 10 innovative ways to spend that money. So
anyway, next question, please. There's a hand in the second row over here.
Hi, I'm Ilamurugu. I'm the business head of Snack Smart. We are into snacks vending machine services. So I just have a doubt. How do you see the threat from the ad blockers?
Okay. So I think ad blockers is often discussed these days, and I think that's something for just to get a better perspective for everybody. That's something which Apple just allowed on the App Store. Now Apple is allowing ad blockers for iPhone devices. I think from an immediate perspective, if I take an India lens, it's not, I think we look at our data quite closely. I think given how small iPhone is, it's not really, and how you need an option for that, it's not really impacting. But while that's more immediate, I think the writing is on the wall that if Apple is doing this, the world is feeling about it. I feel that that's going to be a growing scenario, so you don't need to look at today's data because today's data may be fairly small. But I think over a period of time, I think with the ad blocking technologies, what's really happening is that the way in which we have known the traditional banner advertising, that may be under threat. But advertising itself can't really be under threat because that's really the driver of free internet. If today all the services, all the apps or the sites which you are given to you for free, then they need an ecosystem which is really an advertising ecosystem. So the ad blockers, what they're trying to do is they would evolve the advertising platform companies to invest in things around native advertising, around content advertising, and I think that's where the experiential advertising is growing towards. So the banner advertising as we know it may be on its downside, but advertising as such will evolve into becoming a more immersive experience with things like these becoming popular.
If I can just add to that, you know, a similar question was asked not on ad blocking, but this was at a festival where somebody suggested that the challenge for creativity is much greater because, you know, on a YouTube ad, after 5 seconds I can, you know, decide to walk away from you. My answer to that was I could do it with a television in 1 second. I could, you know, I saw an ad I didn't like, I press the button and change the channel. I could do it with a newspaper, I could throw it away. So I think the answer there also is, are you creatively engaging your consumer? That's very important whether in the, you know, brick and mortar world or a digital world. You know, you've seen if you see the new ad, not ad, it's a YouTube film for Johnny Walker created by 2 students. It's not an official ad, it's called Brothers. You must have a look at it. It's got a few million views in a few days. Now that is often I wanted to see the ad. So I think somewhere you must remember that you must engage and entertain your consumers as well for them to consume your ads. You can't just put it out there. Next question, there were your 2 hands at the back.
I think there is a hand there.
Yep. Whichever, whoever gets there first. Yes, give it.
Hi, Anant, Anuj. Great insight, and in fact, later in my keynote, I'll be addressing one of the paradigms which we never talk about in all these conferences, which is audio advertising. In the context of what you all discussed about language barriers, going vernacular, bandwidth constraints, and all of that, where do you see audio advertising going on? Because I represent a company called Savan, and that's our bread and butter.
I'm sure, I think, Sandeep, you would have greater insights on that, on audio advertising. I think I'll share from my perspective. I think I think anything which is immersive. I think today audio has become a significant part of the content which is consumed over the internet. So what was music over radio is now music over Savan or Ghana or RDO or any of these apps. And I think that's what music has evolved, that it's music which is being streamed for free over IP onto your phone app. And clearly when that is happening, then clearly when so much of audio content is being consumed, advertising will have to become immersive as part of that. So I think it's like as important a criteria, it's like it's the new radio. And if that is the new radio, then, and if that channel needs to provide you music for free, then it needs to support it with advertising. And similar challenges, I think today radio advertising has evolved a lot to become very entertaining and fun. I think sometimes when I'm driving, I actually prefer the ads on radio to the content. So it's fairly innovative, and I think similarly on digital audio, which is what you're referring to, I think that innovation is really going to drive it, but that clearly is going to be a significant driver. So audio, video, text, native, I think all of them have a reason to coexist because people are consuming almost any and every kind of content through apps. And because they're consuming any and every kind of content, any and every kind of advertising, be it a manifestation of print advertising or radio or TV, all of that will get manifested on your mobile phone. So I think it all will coexist, and no doubt about it growing, because I think as consumers we have all grown to become addicts of these apps which are giving us music on the go without us needing to really download anything on our devices.
Unconnected to your question, but I think notable is a couple of weeks ago, HDFC Bank launched a musical logo and a sonic brand identity. I think it is significant. It's recognizing that, that is one sense which has been ignored in large part. What sound does to human emotions. And for HDFC, which is not a very aggressive bank, a conservative bank, to think this through and make significant investments in a sonic identity, I think it's great news for people like you, And it's only a ratification of what Anuj is saying. Sorry, next. That corner. We are getting questions only from the corners. Nobody in the middle wants to ask. Yes.
Hi there. This is Manish here. And I understand the value of marketing for any startup. But there's a bigger challenge that lies way before the level where online marketing and digital marketing comes into picture. So being a startup, I'm sure 8 out of 9 startups will face this challenge where...
Excuse me, can you keep it as a question, not as a speech?
Yeah.
Just easier, yeah?
So the challenge a lot of startups may face these days is that marketing is one of the most expensive platforms where they need to be and create the brand awareness. So to reach to a level, before we reach to a level where we do these marketing, what's an alternate for those startups who are not lucky enough to let's say get a funding in the initial stages? How these startups can actually promote their product using these platforms, especially those who don't have a lot of funds in their pockets?
So I think it's far easier today than earlier. So I think with the kind of power which is there for your free, like whether it's your viral marketing or social marketing or WhatsApp or things like that. So I think clearly your word of mouth and things which you do in terms of whether it's your app store optimization, if you're building an app, or search engine optimization, I think all of those are areas where you can still build a lot more organic traffic today than any time earlier. While I say that, I also understand that there are significant limitations of that. Facebook doesn't make it easy for you to really do anything for free nowadays. Even a simple post won't reach your fans if you're not promoting it. So I think that challenge is there, but I think you look at a brick and mortar business, the only way you could reach out to your consumers was through paid advertising. Digital is at least offering you some ways in which you can reach out and growth hack your journey by not spending money. But I think a good mix of doing some paid advertising plus investing in areas of app store or search optimization, viral marketing, I think all of that together can ensure that with every $100 which you're spending on paid, you're getting a greater ROI from organic or earned marketing. And I think you need to play that mix in the early days well. And I can see that the challenge is not very easy, but I've seen some companies do it successfully, and we can possibly talk offline on more details on that. But it's difficult, but there are cases of companies doing that.
Anyway, we'll cut this session short because we're eating into time for the next panel. But Anuj is around, so please catch him when you're having coffee or whatever. And, well, apologies to the next panel. I didn't keep track of the time. Thank you so much, Anuj. Thank you for a fantastic talk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.